Bonjour, hello everyone. Welcome and thank you for participating in today's technical briefing on medical marijuana regulations. Je me présente, Eric Morissette from Media Relations for Health Canada. Today's session will begin shortly with some opening remarks by Ms. Jacqueline Bogden, Assistant Deputy Minister for Cannabis Legalization and Regulation Branch, and Andrea Budgell, Director of Policy for the Office of Medical Cannabis. We will then open the floor and teleconference line to questions from the media. Il y aura d'abord une courte présentation et suite à cela, nous répondrons à vos questions. If you are a member of the media and wish to ask a question, please press *1 at any time on your phone. Si vous êtes un membre des médias et que vous désirez poser une question, veuillez appuyer sur étoile 1. Procédons à la séance d'information technique. Let's begin today's technical briefing. Ms. Bogden.
Thank you, Eric. So, in response to the Federal Court of Canada's decision in Allard versus Canada, Health Canada is announcing today the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes regulations. These regulations will replace the Marijuana for Medical Purposes regulations as the regulations that will govern Canada's medical cannabis program, and they will come into force on August 24th, 2016. Health Canada is confident that these new regulations provide reasonable access to cannabis for medical purposes and address the issues identified by the federal court. Under these new regulations, Canadians who have been authorized by their healthcare practitioner to access cannabis for medical purposes will be able to produce a limited amount of cannabis for their own medical purposes, or they will be able to designate someone to produce it for them. They will also continue to have the option of purchasing safe, quality-controlled cannabis from one of the 34 producers licensed by Health Canada. Individuals who wish to produce a limited amount of cannabis for their own medical purposes or to designate someone to produce it for them will need to obtain authorization from their healthcare practitioner and register with Health Canada. Additional information on how to register and legally purchase starting materials will be available on Health Canada's website on August 24th. Health Canada will work closely with provincial authorities which regulate healthcare practitioners to share data and information, such as the quantities of cannabis being authorized for medical purposes in their jurisdiction. Health Canada will also continue to support law enforcement representatives by providing a dedicated phone line, as we do today, that is accessible 24 hours a day and 7 days a week to confirm, when necessary, that specific individuals are authorized to possess or to produce a limited amount of cannabis for their own medical purposes. The new regulations will continue to be evaluated in an effort to ensure that individuals who are authorized to access cannabis for their own medical purposes have reasonable access. Health Canada is also committed to studying other models, including pharmacy distribution, to provide access to cannabis for medical purposes. Canadians are reminded that access to cannabis for medical purposes is only permitted under the terms and conditions set out in these new regulations. Storefronts selling marijuana, commonly known as dispensaries and compassion clubs, are not authorized to sell cannabis for medical or any other purposes. These operations are illegally supplied and provide products that are unregulated and may be unsafe. Illegal storefront distribution and sale of cannabis in Canada are subject to law enforcement action. Finally, these new regulations are designed to provide an immediate solution required to address the court judgment. These regulatory changes should not be interpreted as being the longer-term plan for the regulation of access to cannabis for medical purposes, which is presently being determined as part of the government's commitment to legalize, strictly regulate, and restrict access to marijuana.
À la suite de la décision de la Cour fédérale du Canada dans l'affaire Allard contre le Canada, Santé Canada a fait l'annonce aujourd'hui du règlement sur l'accès au cannabis à des fins médicales. Le règlement remplacera le règlement sur la marijuana à des fins médicales à titre de règlement régissant le programme canadien de cannabis à des fins médicales et entrera en vigueur le 24 août 2016. Santé Canada ne doute pas que le règlement offre un accès raisonnable au cannabis à des fins médicales et s'attaque aux problèmes cernés par la Cour fédérale. En vertu du règlement, les Canadiens qui ont reçu l'autorisation d'une professionnelle de la santé pour avoir accès à du cannabis à des fins médicales pourront produire une quantité limitée de cannabis pour leur propre consommation à des fins médicales ou désigner une personne qui le fera pour eux. Ils auront aussi toujours la possibilité d'acheter du cannabis sûr dont la qualité fait l'objet d'un contrôle auprès de l'une des 34 producteurs autorisés par Santé Canada. Toute personne qui souhaite produire une quantité limitée de cannabis pour sa propre consommation à des fins médicales ou qui souhaite désigner une personne pour le faire pour elle devra obtenir l'autorisation d'un professionnel de la santé et s'inscrire auprès de Santé Canada. De plus amples renseignements sur la manière de s'inscrire et de se procurer de produits de départ en toute légalité seront affichés sur le site web de Santé Canada le 24 août. Santé Canada travaillera de près avec les autorités provinciales qui réglementent des professionnels de la santé en vue d'échanger des données et de l'information comme les quantités de cannabis à des fins médicales autorisées sur leur territoire. Santé Canada continuera aussi d'appuyer les représentants des forces de l'ordre en mettant à leur disposition un numéro de téléphone réservé qu'ils peuvent composer en tout temps pour confirmer, au besoin, si une personne a l'autorisation de posséder ou de produire une quantité limitée de cannabis à des fins médicales. L'évaluation de règlement se poursuivra en vue de veiller à ce que les personnes qui ont l'autorisation de posséder du cannabis à des fins médicales y aient un accès raisonnable. Santé Canada est aussi déterminé à examiner d'autres modèles, y compris la distribution par les pharmacies en vue de donner accès au cannabis à des fins médicales. On rappelle aux Canadiens que l'accès au cannabis à des fins médicales n'est permis que dans les conditions énoncées dans la réglementation. Les comptoirs de vente de marijuana, communément appelés dispensaires ou clubs de compassion, n'ont pas l'autorisation de vendre du cannabis à des fins médicales ou autres. Ces comptoirs vendent des produits non réglementés et possiblement dangereux qui font l'objet d'un approvisionnement illégal. La vente et la distribution illégale de cannabis dans les comptoirs au Canada sont passibles de mesures de l'application de la loi. Le but du règlement est de fournir dans les médias une solution exigée par la décision de la Cour. Ces modifications réglementaires ne doivent pas être interprétées comme un plan de réglementation à long terme de l'accès au cannabis à des fins médicales. L'établissement de ce plan est en cours dans le contexte de l'engagement du gouvernement de légaliser et de réglementer rigoureusement la marijuana, ainsi que d'en limiter l'accès.
Merci. Thank you. We will now open the telephone line to questions. Please identify yourself and include the media outlet you are representing. We will be taking your questions in both official languages. We ask that you limit yourself to one question and one follow-up. Veuillez vous nommer et dire quel média vous représentez. Nous vous demanderons de vous limiter à une question seulement et une question de suivi. Vous pouvez poser vos questions dans l'une des deux langues officielles. Téléphoniste?
Merci. Thank you. We do have a first question from Gloria Galloway from Globe and Mail. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hello. I note that you say that in the press release that those who who were previously authorized to grow their own marijuana and met the terms of the federal court injunction will be able to continue to do so. But will they be required now to scale back their production to just the amount that meets individual needs, or will they be able to continue to grow whatever they have grown previously? As you probably know, many people believe that they grow hundreds of plants sometimes and supply, in fact, the dispensaries you were talking about.
Gloria, thank you for your question. So with respect to individuals who are covered by the injunction, they will continue to be covered by the injunction under the terms that they were originally authorized until such time as the injunction is lifted. For individuals who are covered by the injunction who, for instance, might wish to change addresses or change who is designated to produce a limited amount of cannabis for them, they can come to Health Canada at any time after August 24th and register, seek to register, and we can process that for them. But yes, those who are covered by the injunction will continue to be covered by the injunction until such time as it's lifted.
Okay. So I guess I have two questions. A double-barreled follow-up then. When do you anticipate the injunction would be lifted? And in the meantime, as you know, pot is being sold across the country with basically zero oversight at these medical dispensaries that are largely being supplied by these people. And what are you doing, what are you going to do to protect consumers between now and the time, whatever time that legislation will be brought in and made into law, which could be some time? So when do you expect that injunction, and what are you going to be doing in between now and whenever the new legislation that legalizes marijuana comes into effect to protect consumers?
Okay. With respect to the injunction and when it might be lifted, our focus right now is to ensure that we're ready as of August 24th to begin helping Canadians who wish to register to produce a limited amount of cannabis for medical purposes. So our focus is really on that, and I think that we would only seek to lift the injunction once we are confident that we could, actually process the applications from individuals who are covered. As you may know, there are up to about 28,000 individuals covered by the injunction. So we'd want to make sure that we would be able to process those applications quickly. So our focus right now is on making sure that we're ready as of August 24th. With respect to your other question about supply to dispensaries, I think I would restate, what I indicated, is in our Health Canada statement that we issued today, that, there are the only means by which Canadians can lawfully access cannabis for medical purposes are under the terms and conditions set out in either the existing regulations or the new regulations that will come into play on August 24th. So if you are an individual that requires access to cannabis for medical purposes today, you can do that through one of the 34 licensed producers by Health Canada, and you can be assured that what you are getting is produced in a safe and quality-controlled manner. And I think that the statement that we've issued is clear about storefronts or dispensaries or compaction clubs, that these operations are illegally supplied and that subject to law enforcement action, which is supported by the Government of Canada.
Thank you. Merci. We do have a question coming from Peter Colvin from Financial Post. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I just wanted to ask, why did you decide to allow people to designate someone else to grow for them?
Okay, Peter, thank you for that question. The program is designed to help individuals who need access to cannabis for medical purposes. Not in all instances will people be able to produce for themselves. Some individuals who access this program are actually quite not well. So, we allow that provision so they can designate someone else to produce the limited amount that they're authorized to for medical purposes by their healthcare practitioner. So we enable that through the regulations so they can have someone produce it for them.
So would you have to do full, criminal background checks on the people they designate as well?
Yeah, there's a number of measures with respect to individuals that you designate, that you could seek to designate to produce for you. One of those is that they will have to go to local police and get a background check, which would confirm for us that the individual has not been convicted of a drug-related offense in the previous 10 years. That would make them ineligible. Yeah.
Thank you. Merci. Our next question is from Jennifer Chevalier from CBC News, Ottawa. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my call. When the MMPR came in, the government listed a number of concerns about the old rules under which people were allowed to grow their own, and that included the risk of fire, burglary, and mold. How has that changed under these new regulations? Are you not concerned about the risks of fire, mold, and people's homes getting broken into?
Okay. Jennifer, thanks for that question. Yes, I think we do remain concerned about the health and safety and the conditions under which Canadians will do this. One of the documents that we made available to everyone today is an information bulletin which actually sets out very explicitly for people to make sure that they're aware of what they're lawfully allowed to do. And of course, what they would not be allowed to do under the new regulations. In it, what we're seeking to do is to make sure that Canadians who may exercise this option to produce cannabis for their own medical purposes are really well aware of the rules that they need to follow under the regulations, that they're expected to comply with any municipal bylaws that touch on electrical safety and fire safety. And in addition to that, we've set out a number of simple precautions that they may wish to take to reduce the risk to their health and safety. So, for instance, ensuring that, if you were going to produce a limited amount of cannabis in your home, that you were thinking about things like proper ventilation that would remove, moisture that can cause mold, both on your plants and in your home. That they're seeking the professional advice if they were going to make structural changes to their house. So we remain concerned by those things, and we'll encourage Canadians to think carefully about, their rights and responsibilities under the law, make sure that they're very well informed, and that they're also thinking about other precautions that they should be taking to protect their health and safety.
Okay, and as a follow-up, I'm going to do a double-barreled one like Gloria did. I think from what I understand that they have to get the seeds or the plants from a licensed producer. Is that correct? And if so, what do you say to the concerns that people have that they already had issues with some of the strains available from licensed producers, and they were already frustrated by some of the limited availability? So how does, if they have to get the plants from the licensed producers, how does that address those concerns?
Okay. Yes, I would confirm for you that the licensed producers will be the sole legal source of supply for seeds and plants. So in other words, the starting materials that Canadians would need to enable, their production of a limited amount for their personal medical purposes. With respect to concerns that may have been raised about access to particular varieties or strains, I think what I would offer is that we have an extensive network of licensed producers now that is in the number of 34, and that has grown steadily over the last couple of years, and we should expect that it would continue to. I think that we're reasonably confident that the licensed producers will be able to supply what people are looking for. But if if concerns emerge in that regard at a later date, Health Canada would, of course, want to know about that.
Thank you. Our next question is from Kyle Bogden from iPolitics. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hi there. I'm just curious how much the new framework will cost the government, if anything, and whether the department's looked into whether this will affect licensed producers in a positive or negative way. Sometimes, departments do financial impact assessments on policy regulations. I'm just curious if there's you're expecting any cost changes.
Okay. Sorry, your second part of your question was about licensed producers?
Yeah, so on the one hand, I'm curious if this will cost the government anything. So, for example, I see that you're running a phone 24/7 phone line. I'm not sure if that's new or not. And on the other hand, I'm curious if you think that this will cost licensed producers or help them grow their market or anything like that.
Kyle, so on the second question about licensed producers and the impact on them, I guess what I would say is that, first of all, the licensed producers are, have very close to 70, they're serving very close to 70,000 patients or registered clients. As I mentioned in the opening statement and the answer to some of the questions, they have been and will continue to be a place where Canadians who have need can access, safe and quality controlled product, and that's delivered within a reasonable time frame, and we can expect that to continue. We have also, of course, as I mentioned in response to an earlier question, licensed producers will now be the sole legal source of supply for plants and seeds as starting material. And in addition, we have enabled that individuals who wish to produce a limited amount for themselves will be able to obtain interim supply from any of the licensed producers. So while they're waiting for their plants to mature, they can use the certificate that Health Canada will give these individuals to go and access interim supply to ensure that they have access to what they need for medical purposes. With respect to the cost of the changes to Health Canada, some of the items that I mentioned, like our 24/7 line that's made available for law enforcement, that's something that continues. So it's part of the existing costs of the program. I haven't got my notes on what with me on what the incremental costs will be for us to begin processing these applications. I'm sorry, I should have had that with you, but we'll follow up with you after the call.
Thank you. Next question is from Ian McLeod from Ottawa Citizen. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hello, thank you. I'm at a bit of a disadvantage here. I don't have the statement or the info package, but it may be repeated in there. But how do you define the limited amount that folks will be allowed to grow? Is that something up to the physician, and if it is there a range that the physician is limited to?
Okay, Ian, thank you for your question. Yes, the limited amount is tied to the daily amount that is authorized by an individual's healthcare practitioner, and the amounts that they're able. I think it is indicated in the documents that we distributed, but just for the purposes of information on this call, if you were an individual that sought to register and you had the authorization of your healthcare practitioner. Let's say you would need to identify for us whether you plan to grow indoors or you plan to grow outdoors. If you plan to grow outdoors, the authorization, let's say the doctor had prescribed 1 gram a day, and so that would be 2 plants if you were growing outdoors. And if the doctor prescribed 1 gram, it would be 5 plants indoors.
Why the difference? Just grow bigger outdoors?
Sure. I think I can step in and help answer that. Yes, the formulas that we have in place assume a yield of the plants that are grown, and yes, it is expected that plants grown outdoors will provide you with a greater yield.
Thank you. Merci. Our next question is from Mark Douglas from 680 News. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Thank you. Here in Toronto, we've had dozens of raids on these dispensaries. I'm wondering, why keep the dispensaries illegal under these regulations? You have regulations for these third-party growers that a consumer can designate. Why not put the dispensaries under the same regulations, the same conditions to prove we've had no convictions for 10 years, as you mentioned earlier? If you can have one set of regulations that allow a third-party grower to grow for me or for the consumer, why not put the same regulations on the dispensaries?
Okay. Thank you for your question, Mark. I think I'll emphasize some of the points that I made in the opening remarks is that the government needed to respond to the decision by the federal court within the 6-month time frame that it needed, that the court gave the government to respond. And so we had to, look immediately at options that could be regulations that could be brought into force within that very short time frame. Anyone that's familiar with regulations will know that that is a very short time frame to do so. So we've looked at regulations that had previously been in effect that could be brought in. It was very important that we were able to respond to the court decision and have a charter-compliant regime in place that would ensure that Canadians could have access to medical cannabis as of August 24th. The other point I would probably make is to emphasize another point in our statement, which is that these regulations are designed to provide an immediate solution to address the court judgment, and they should not be interpreted as the longer-term plan for the regulation of access to cannabis for medical purposes. That is presently being determined as part of the government's commitment to legalize, strictly regulate, and restrict access to marijuana. You're probably well aware that the government has struck a task force which is looking at the legalization and strict regulation of marijuana. And one of the aspects of that, the work that the task force has been asked to look at is the future of the access to medical cannabis program. I guess I would maybe take the opportunity to say for those who have views on that, they could, will be welcome to submit their input to the task force through the Health Canada website. So if I may, a follow-up question to that then. So for now, the dispensaries are going to be deemed illegal. They're going to have to shut down. But then when this task force comes back and the legislation comes through, they could be made legal, and then all these businesses will have shut down for nothing? Mark, I think I wouldn't want to speculate on the future. I think it's important. There are lots of decisions that the future of is being looked at in the context of the government's larger commitment. So I think I wouldn't want to speculate on what the future might hold.
Thank you. Merci. Next question is from Eve Couture from Radio Canada Montreal. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous. Ms. Couture, please lift up your handset, unmute your line. Veuillez soulever le combiné, retirer le mode discrétion. So I'm so sorry, hearing no response. I will have to return you to the conference call.
Allô?
Bonjour, Madame Couture.
Oui, bon Seigneur. C'est parce qu'à un moment donné, je vous avais comme mis de côté. C'est trop long. J'aurais une question pour vous. Alors, je voudrais savoir la quantité, vous l'avez dit, mais j'aimerais vous l'entendre répéter en français, donc la quantité qui va être autorisée et où les gens peuvent se procurer actuellement de la marijuana auprès des 34 personnes. Donc, il y a 34 fournisseurs. On va les voir directement. On va à la pharmacie. Pouvez-vous me préciser exactement comment on peut aller s'approvisionner?
Oui, si je comprends bien, vous aimeriez avoir plusieurs renseignements sur les formules pour calculer le nombre de plantes.
Ben, en fait, ça, c'est ça, exact. J'ai compris le nombre de plants marcher avec le nombre de grammes qui est prescrit. C'est bien ça. Oui. Donc, on va pouvoir cultiver le nombre de grammes. Où est-ce qu'on se procure les équipements? Est-ce que c'est Santé Canada qui fournit les boutures, les sortes de plantes?
OK. Parfait. Je comprends bien. Merci. Non, en fait, la seule modalité pour procurer les plants de marijuana ou les graines de marijuana seront les 34 producteurs autorisés par Santé Canada. Donc, si vous êtes une personne qui est enregistrée avec Santé Canada pour produire une quantité limitée de cannabis pour vos propres besoins médicaux, c'est aux 34 producteurs autorisés qui vont être autorisés à vous vendre soit des graines de marijuana ou des plantes.
Ou des plantes, OK. Et puis, actuellement, pour ceux qui ont droit d'avoir de la marijuana à des fins médicales, ils s'approvisionnent auprès des 34 producteurs, mais on va où? On va à la pharmacie pour acheter ça? Où les gens s'approvisionnent où actuellement?
Actuellement, maintenant, c'est avec les 34 producteurs autorisés par Santé Canada. Et comme on a noté dans la déclaration, Santé Canada va étudier d'autres moyens de distribution au futur. Par exemple, distribution par les pharmacies, parce que maintenant, il y a pas de moyens pour les pharmacies à distribuer du cannabis.
Thank you. Merci. Due to the time, I would like to return the meeting back over to you. À cause du temps actuellement, je devrais retourner l'appel à la salle. Merci.
Thank you. This will be all for today's technical briefing. Any additional question can be directed to Health Canada's Media Relations team by dialing 613-957-2983. Again, 613-957-2983. La séance est maintenant terminée. On vous remercie de votre participation. Si vous avez d'autres questions, n'hésitez pas à communiquer avec le Bureau des relations avec les médias de Santé Canada au 613-957-2983, le 613-957-2983.